Hey guys, welcome back to Popo's Woodworks. Today's project is going to be another first time build for me, something I have never done before. So I'm going to be attempting to build a cedar cooler box stand that goes on your deck or your patio or wherever you want to put it. So basically, in short, I had a buddy that had some cedar picket fencing boards. They 6 to 8 feet long, and we worked out a deal and I got my hands on those, which they're a little rough. So I'm going to run them through my planer to dress the sides of the boards up a little bit better. And I've got an old cooler, which is what this camera is sitting on right now. So I'm gonna get the handles off and the hinges and all the other stuff off of the cooler to make it perfectly flat and square where you don't have anything sticking out, and we're gonna get started on this, so stay tuned. Here's the cooler I got. I kind of borrowed this from one of my uncles, but he didn't use it anymore. So the handles is here. I just used a disc grinder and ground them off. And then it had the little plastic hinge with the knob here. I took this off, took the screws out and ground that off. And then on the back side, it had the hinges, so I went ahead and took those off. So basically now it's good and clean. The only thing left I gotta do now is I'm gonna take this drain plug out, because I'm gonna do something different with that. So I'm gonna get this drain plug out and then go ahead and start framing it up out of the cedar. All right, now I got the miter saw set up, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these cedar pickets and I'm gonna cut them down for the legs at 40 inches long. But now I've got these are almost 6 inches wide. I think they're like 5 7/8. So I cut 4 of these, and I'm gonna take the table saw and I'm gonna rip them down the middle, and each one of these boards will be one leg. So let me go ahead and get them on the table saw and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these two, try to get where you can see it, work around the camera, and I'm gonna butt these up together just like this and make sure it's flush here. And then I'm gonna glue these edges and probably just shoot it with some brad nails on this end, but that right there will be your leg. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take 2 pieces of leg, I'm gonna run me a bead of glue down the board. Then I'm gonna take and get my finger and make sure I get a good even coat of glue. Just a touch more here. All right, so now I'm gonna lay this down, figure out what side I like the best. Flush this up on both ends. Hold it firm. Take my brad nailer, tack this in. I'm gonna tack that in. Make sure I didn't miss. All right, so now that I got that, I'm gonna hold it upright to where I can line up my brad. That way I don't splinter one out of the side and miss. Then I'll come back and I'll just put a whole bunch of brads all the way down the edge of this. Double check, make sure I have none. And then of course you got the glue in it. But basically this is going to be your leg. So now I'll take and wipe out the squeeze out and move on to the next one. All right, so here's my 4 table legs, or cooler legs rather. And all I did was took one 6-inch wide fence picket, ripped it in half, and then glued the edges and shot it with the brads, which I put a bunch of brads in it to hold it. So now I'm gonna give the glue a little bit of time to set up to where it'll be a little bit stronger when I start my next step. What I did is I took some extra pieces of cedar. Of course I hadn't cut these yet, but these are probably work out to be the right size. So I'm just laying them. I got this edge completely flat against the cooler, and then I've got this flat against the cooler, and then this one. So that way, to get my sizes, I know now, since this is flat if this is flat, I'm gonna make a mark just to the outside of this right here, and then I can cut 2 of these at this size for the side, and then I'll do the same thing for the long side. All right, what I did here is, once again, I used glue and then shot it with probably 6 to 10 brads in each end, because I really don't want all these screws showing, and I'm putting a lot of faith into this glue that it's gonna do what it does. Sometimes, you know, they say it's stronger than wood. I guess we'll see. But anyhow, I actually formed this right here all the way around to the shape of the cooler. This is the bottom, this is the top of the cooler. So ultimately, this is going to be the very top piece where the cooler slides down in. So now I'm going to let this glue set up, and then all we'll have to do is just build a base so when you put the cooler in, it's going to set on something flat. But I'm still waiting for my legs over there in the floor to finish drying up to where I can start fooling with that. So once that gets dry, we'll get on to the next step. What I did is went ahead and made one exactly like the first one. I put it around the base of the cooler, glued the edges, and shot it with a brad nail. That way I've got 2 frames exactly the same. One of them will be for the top of the cooler, to where you can mount the slats to, and one of them's going to be, I'm going to have to run some crossbars in there after the glue dries, and that's what the cooler's actually going to set on and hold it in place. What I did is I cut 5 slats that I'm going to put in the middle of here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use screws to put these in. I'm going to pre-drill and then run the screws in, because this piece right here is going to be the bottom. This is what's going to hold all the weight of the drinks, the ice, and all that in the cooler. And so I want to make sure this is right sturdy. And like I said, you won't be able to see this, so I'm not really going to worry about it. So I'm going to go ahead and put some screws in and get these things anchored down. All right, I got the slats screwed in, so now I'm back to the cooler again. So what I'm going to do is I got this back around the top end, the opening of the cooler, and I'm going to grab these legs, and the legs are going to go on the cooler just like this. Let me get this one on here so you can see get a better sight picture of it. So the legs are going to go on the cooler just like that, but I'm going to go ahead and put glue on them ends. That way when I tack them with the brads, the glue will help hold them together. So I got the top part on now, and I got the legs attached and shot them in there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and slide the cooler back in here, and then where the bottom of the cooler is, I'm going to take that other piece that I did and set it right on top of that and go ahead and glue it and staple that in. All right, so I got the cooler in here. Now I'm going to take this frame. This is going to be the bottom, and I'm using the side that's flush. I'm going to get it in these legs and slowly work it down just to make sure it's going to fit. And it's going to sit just like that, and like I said, that's right there is what's going to hold the cooler in place when you flip it all right side up. So now I'm going to go ahead and put some glue on the edges, slide that back out, glue it up. Then I'm going to put it back in there and then hit it with the brad gun. I've got my slats cut for the side, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line these up, and of course it's not going to line up perfect, so I'm going to have to cut a little narrow piece, probably put it in the center. So I'm going to line these all the way across here, and I'm going to glue the edges and then shoot them with the brad. It's also going to hide these screws right here. And then I'll probably come back with I don't think I have a piece of scrap, but I'll probably come back with probably a 2-inch piece and put it right over top of this to where to give it a little bit more of a dressy edge. I've got all the sides on. Now I run the glue down the edge, and I'm going to run this strip right here to kind of hide this when you're looking at it, and one at the top of the box. I've got the sides on. I got my trim edges. Now I'm going to put a shelf here. So you'll have the cooler box, and I want a shelf sitting there. And what I did is I had this scrap piece of wood, and this 10 inches long, I flushed it up here and then went right there at the wood and drew a line. That way, when I go to put my shelf in there, I've got all these posts marked. I'll know exactly where to line it up. That way it'll make sure it's good and level. All right, this is what we got so far. I got the bottom shelf frame, on here and ready. So now all I gotta do is cut the wood and run the planks across, which I'll probably just use the wide planks just like this, and then if there's a gap I'll fill in for that. So I got the shelf done, and I did have to cut because every like I said earlier, every cooler is a weird different size, and this one is really old. So but anyhow, so I had to cut this little strip here to put in the middle. So to make it look right, I did the big, small, big, then the tiny one, and so on to make it look equal. So basically that's it in a nutshell. Now all I gotta do is get it down and build the frame that I'm gonna put across around this lid right here. Now what I'm gonna do is get the lid, the wood cut for the lid, and this is, like I said, it's an old cooler, so it's an odd shaped lid. So basically I laid this down on top, and let me get this piece out of the way, and I measured from here to this, and it's going to be 2 3/4 inches. So that's how wide that I'm going to make it for this strip that runs down this edge. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 4 pieces to length at 2 3/4 inches to go around the outer perimeter of this lid. So the cooler lid frame is done. So basically all I got to do now is I'm going to come in here. This thing really slopes really bad, so I actually flipped them inside out. I don't know if you can see this line. That's what I got to work with of actual flat edge before it starts sloping. So I'm going to take and throw a couple, probably maybe 1 1/4 inch, 2 inch screws in here, and then once I get this all attached, I may come up here where to hit the meaty part of the cooler lid. And probably what I'm going to do to hide the screws, because I'm definitely going to have screws in here to hold the lid down, is I'll probably take this cedar and cut me 4 more pieces of this and plane it down to maybe 1/4 inch, and then overlay that over top of the screws to hide the screw heads. All right, you can see where I put the screws in, and so these are the pieces that I just planed down to 1/4 inches. So I'm gonna go ahead, I got a little bit of glue on it, and I'm gonna go ahead and tack them with a 5/8 inch brad nail. All right, so I made a little goof here. I don't know if you can see it. Where I added these, I didn't think about the extra distance. So you're gonna see this end grain here. So what I'm gonna do is cut 2 more pieces where to go from this end to this end right here to cover that up. But now I got 2 glued pieces here that I can just do whatever with. So be it. That's what makes projects fun. Okay, so I actually fixed my screw up and got the edge right, and the top was kind of a weird size, so I used the 6 inches on each end here, and then I wanted to mix the real dark cedar with the light colored cedar, so I did those at 2 1/2, and then this one's 1 inch and I think 1 3/4 inches, and just try to get it to look different. So the way it stands now is I have the little strip on the lid which flows down to the center of the box and also goes straight down to the very bottom of the box, so it kind of looks like I meant to do that on purpose, or at least that's what I'm going to say. Anyhow, so now I'm going to hit the top with brad nails and a little bit of glue, and then go ahead and put the hardware on. I removed the drain plug, and I actually had to drill this hole out a little bit bigger, and I put the cooler inside the box and marked it, drilled a tiny little pilot hole. Now I'm going to take a paddle bit and drill this 3/4 inch hole for my piping that I have, because I got the spigot that I'm going to use, and this piping the rubber washer, and I'm going to use this as the nut on the inside. So let me get this installed. Alrighty, so I finally finished this thing, and as you can see, I ran the spigot through, which I've got it so tight. You could put screws in here to anchor this to it, but it's not going to move, and I want to be able to unscrew it when I need to take the cooler back out. Then I got me a bottle opener, and I built a little box so when you pop the lid off, it'll fall down in there. And this is made to where it'll literally lift up and off. I did the keyhole router bit and made that. I can't get that back on with just one hand. So I added the handle here. I didn't put them on the sides because I didn't want people picking it up, and it's really not all that heavy. So when you open it, that's what I did with the drain. That way all the water drains out. So that's what it looks like open. And then I added 3 hinges on the back. I've been wanting to build one of these for a while, and when I finally got my hands on the cedar, I decided I'd go ahead and give it a shot. So there it is. I don't think it's too shabby for the first time, but we should get a lot of use out of it over the summer. Well, that's it for that project. If you got any questions, shoot me a comment. I'll try to answer to the best of my ability, and if I don't know the answer, I'll try my best to figure it out for you. And like I always say, y'all have a nice day. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and on to the next project.